What's
Hello.
up, our friends at YouTube? Hey, we're so glad you guys are here, honestly. Each week we're going to jump on, we're going to record, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And you can click the notification bell so that way you can be notified when we do go live.
And hopefully you can hear us okay. We've really tried with our audio over here on YouTube, as well as over on our audio version of the podcast. So some of you guys here might not know that this is also available in non-video form with just audio over on any podcasting platform. So iTunes, Spotify.
The podcast app.
Yes.
Yep. Like all those places. So.
All right. Should we go ahead?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Thanks, guys, for being here. All right. Let's get rolling.
Let's do it. You're doing the question,
No,
Ashlynn.
I already forgot it.
How's that, YouTube? This is all going to be edited out on the podcast, but you guys are privy to it.
What is it? It's not even funny. We waited too long to record. Okay. How do I make my relationship work?
Okay, here is a review for you. And if you haven't yet, hop over, leave a review, rate us. This helps other people who need this resource to find it. And this is one, it's called Thank You, and it's from Catholic Mom of 10. It says, we are about 6 years out from D-Day, married 25 years, and parenting 14 children. This free resource has been so helpful for both of us. We are very grateful. Thank you all for being here. You are so welcome, and we appreciate the review because sometimes they're a little bit tricky to leave, but we're grateful for it and glad that you guys are enjoying it. And remember, we started this resource.
Did she say Catholic mom of 10?
Correct.
But parenting 14.
Oh
I know.
gosh.
She's
Good
a
for you.
superwoman.
You're amazing.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
That's
But
awesome.
again, we started this as a free resource because we wanted to give and we wanted to just help because we knew what it was like to be in just the dark, hopeless corners of betrayal and addiction. And we're just happy to be here and provide it.
Okay. So let's, we're going to zoom out a little bit. So, you know, we talk about something very specific, sex addiction, betrayal, usually in the context of relationships. And so let's zoom out a little bit and more in a broad sense, we're going to look at how do you make a relationship work? What are some of the elements of a really healthy relationship? What are some things that you can learn how to do or learn how to work on so that you can get your relationship back on track, get what you want out of your relationship?
Okay, so question for you, starting it out. Brannon, the expert, you don't share our story.
Right.
And so is this something as a listener, as the expert, that you are going to be like, this is something that your relationship could use as well?
No, my relationship is perfect. My wife just worships the ground I walk on because I'm the expert. Right?
She's also never listened to an episode.
No, she's just a lucky woman, Jenny. No, like any relationship, there's ups and there's downs and there's work. And absolutely, this is stuff that me and my wife are going to work on and are working on. So I'm actually really excited to talk about this because a lot of what we're going to talk about are things that I'm going to have to look at and say, you know, where am I in with that, and is it really working for me or not? So let's dive right in. One of the first things, and I talk about this all the time, and it can really trigger people who have experienced betrayal trauma. But one of the first things is to practice compassion and gratitude. So when we talk about compassion, we're talking about compassion for yourself, and we're talking about compassion and gratitude for your partner. Now, that's like mixing oil and water. You bring in betrayal trauma and say, let's practice compassion for your partner. It's like, ugh, I don't want to do that or I'll get hurt. But remember, we're zooming out a little bit, and we're just saying, in general, in relationships, having compassion for yourself and having compassion for them is a good thing and is helpful for both of you to move forward and to learn how to connect with each other. So any thoughts on this, you guys?
Yeah, I think kind of a reminder for me is, okay, I've been compelled to do this work. But had I not been compelled to do recovery like we have done, there's still going to be parts of our marriage that I would have absolutely needed compassion for myself and for Coby. And it's little things like, hey, you said you were going to do this thing. You said you were going to take out the trash, and now we missed the trash. Like, thanks a lot. Of course, I could get up his tailpipe about you didn't do what you said you were going to do, or I could have some compassion and say, you know what, sometimes I don't do what I say I'm going to do because something comes up.
So to have compassion for him.
Yeah.
Now this is a hard one though. Let's say you have a spouse who is lying all the time, cheating on you, gaslighting, manipulating. You're supposed to have compassion for them.
That's a tough one.
Maybe for the roots of why they're doing that, but I'm not sure how you see it right in the thick of it if they don't own and see their stuff. Maybe you can help with that.
That's actually a good way to put it, Ashlynn, is I have this kind of altruistic view. I think you can have compassion for anybody at any time. You can have compassion for Hitler. It doesn't mean what Hitler did is okay. It doesn't mean you're going to invite him over for dinner and get really close to him. But you can take a step back and say, okay, I can try to understand why he did what he did. And it's when I talk about compassion and having compassion for your partner, even when they're a sex addict who gaslights you and breaks boundaries, I don't talk about it so that we can, blame the partner for the problems. Like, look, if you changed your thinking on them, then things would get better. That's not why I do that. I do that to try to set them free. Like what you were just saying, Ashlynn, when you're caught up in that victim, noticing he didn't take the garbage out and you're stuck and you're angry and it sets you free to say, okay, hang on, I'm going to try to let go of some things, have some compassion for him, but still be true to myself as to what's actually going on here, right? And so, anyways, we said we were taking a zoom out. Now here we are talking about betrayal. But I think it's important because as we talk about having compassion for your spouse, it can be really, really difficult to want to have compassion for your spouse when you're in the midst of betrayal trauma. But there is a place where you can be in the midst of betrayal trauma, be boundaried, know who you are, be protected, and still have compassion for your partner at the same time. So
I like it.
Yep.
I like it.
Compassion leads to what I believe the most important energy is for a healthy relationship, which is gratitude. And gratitude for your life, gratitude for your partner. You have a growth mindset, an acceptance mentality, and you're just grateful. And that sets the stage for real deep connection. So compassion leads to gratitude.
And
So-
it's, sorry.
You get to go.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things, Brannon, that you hear over and over and over, like whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a parent or whatever, that bring gratitude into your life. And it's like, yeah, I know, but, and the truth is it's there for a reason. People are saying it for a reason. It actually does change your mindset.
No question. Yes.
Compassion for sure is going to be one of those things that will probably demand some like little bits of focus each day in order to keep compassion front of mind. Is that a fair statement?
If you're resonating in resentment and rejection and victim mode, resentment, rejection, victim mode, and you're just like there, you're ruminating in it. It does take. Really, the work is not forcing yourself out of that. It takes some surrender and letting go. And then it does take a concerted effort to put some time into loving, into practicing that compassion. So it doesn't just happen on its own. You're absolutely right, Coby.
And I'm going to share one little quick thing that I did, because it is hard, like you said, especially when you're in kind of a funky place in your relationship, to say, I'm going to find gratitude and compassion for my partner. I did start a journal that was just for myself, but it was 3 things I was thankful for Coby that day. So it could be anything. It's he woke up and helped with the kids' breakfast, or whatever, something directly towards me or towards our
His
children.
beautiful smile.
Yeah, like honestly though, like that can change and shift a mood. And so I started writing those things down, and not necessarily to say, "Hey, look, I'm giving this to you." I wasn't ready for that maybe of words of affirmation, but it was just I'm going to at least start to own it and see it so that I can start to see it more and more.
Yes, love it. Quick story. Last week we were watching my nieces and nephews, so we doubled our children. So we had 8 kids under the age of 11 at our house, including a 2-year-old who's still in diapers. And I know Catholic mom of 10 is like rolling her eyes, saying like, "I don't feel sorry for you."
Yes.
But that's what we had at our house, and I was trying to get something done with the kids, so I sat them down. We were just going to have like a little talk, maybe say family prayer at the end of the night. And Jenny wasn't like showing up. She was like doing her thing in the other room. I was like, "Hey, can you come join us?" Yeah, I'll be there. And so it takes her like 20 minutes. And now I'm trying to keep 8 kids sitting down like for 20 minutes. And my level of frustration is just rising and rising. And I'm like, can't you see that I'm trying to do something good for the family? And like it's hard to, to get these kids to behave. Well, I'm frustrated, and all of a sudden Jenny disappears. She's gone, and I'm like, oh, now she's ditching me. So now I'm like totally in victim mode. All my stories are going, and I start thinking, well, where is she? And I get a few of the kids to bed, and I go outside, and Jenny's under like a tree, like crying. And she's sitting there just crying. And it was interesting for me because I immediately went to a totally different place in my heart. So my heart was at war with her. My heart was resentful and angry. And I saw her emotion, and it was like, whoa, there's pain here. There's some kind of overwhelm going on, some stress. And I had to let go of my stuff because I was ready to tell her like, how unsupportive she was being. And I just sat there with her and let her cry, and she just needed to cry. She was overwhelmed. And I felt my heart go to a place of compassion in that moment. And what was interesting about it is she thanked me later that night. She's like, "Thanks for just sitting with me and letting me like be emotional." And but I do think it blessed her life, but it really blessed mine, that I was able to see her in that way and allow her to have that pain. I got out of all of my own crap and all of my own stuff that I was stuck in. So just an example of how compassion can shift the energy in your relationship and lead you toward connection. So
I love it. Sounds like though that when you have, it sounds like that compassion really facilitated some really great correspondence and communication with the both of you.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that a fair statement?
No question. It actually opened up the possibility for vulnerable emotional connection and communication.
Okay.
So
that tees up nicely.
Which is the next thing. So the first thing for a healthy relationship is to learn how to be compassionate toward each other. The next thing is to learn how to communicate, effectively.
Which if you came into your marriage and you have rad skills as a couple, you deserve a giant award because I don't know anyone who comes in like fully ready to pair with someone who grew up different, who has different ideas, and who does all the things different, right? And then you come together and you're like, okay, now we're doing this together.
99.9% of people suck at communicating when they get into marriage. That's what Ashlyn's saying, and she's absolutely right. Because you don't know what you're really getting into until you're in it. And then when you're in it, you take what mom and dad have modeled to you and taught you, and you think, well, I know how to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to use these tools. Your partner's taking what their mom and dad taught them, and they're like, well, I'm going to use these tools. And next thing you know, you're in this thing where it's just like, is it like we're going in circles? We're feeling stuck. We're feeling resentful. We're not getting resolution. We're not working through things. We're not getting deeper in our connection. And that's oftentimes what happens. And that relationship that felt like such a positive asset in your life starts to turn into this frustrating thing that feels like you're beating your head against a wall.
Well,
right?
even today, one of my women's groups, one of the gals shared, I had that moment, and that everyone I think has in their relationship at some point where you're like, why am I even married to this person? Like, what are
Yes.
we doing? We're just like going along. It's not working. We're not communicating. And that's
Right.
really what it came down to in the end as she started to describe what was happening. There's no communicating happening, and just expectations from each other without anything in between. And,
Absolutely.
And it's messy, and we all do it.
Absolutely. And so here's the thing. We're not going to like be able to teach you all of the healthy communication skills there are on this podcast right now. But one thing, let me give you one little pointer and one thing to think about. Healthy communication, there's a shift that happens with a couple if they understand one thing. Communication is not about coming to an agreement with each other. Communication is not about figuring out how to see the world the same way. Healthy communication is about learning how to value and allow each partner to see the world the way they see it. And not to agree with each other, but to understand each other. That's the ultimate goal, is to learn how to understand, and then you can learn how to compromise and negotiate from there. So then there's all kinds of skills to learn how to understand and to connect.
That is not an easy one and requires practice.
Yes.
Well, I think you brought it into our relationship by saying the phrase that you say a lot, and you've taught our audience, say more.
Yeah.
And it's allowed me to open up and to say more so that he can understand why I'm showing up the way I am, or why my expectation is where it's at.
Yep.
So good job, Coby.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to bomb you with some therapy buzzwords, okay?
Okay.
And these are things I'm going to say, but then we're not going to really explain what they are.
Oh, awesome.
So if you want to go research what they are, then go out and do that. But we talk about them all the time. So shame resiliency. If you want to be an effective communicator, then you need to practice your own individual shame resiliency. That's like base level. Reflective listening. So there's all kinds of reflective listening skills. And so, yeah, go figure those out.
And reflective listening, it's funny because I'll listen to a parenting book and all they're teaching you is reflective listening. And I'm
Totally.
like, oh, I learned this in marriage, there,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Go read Love and Logic. You'll learn
yes,
reflective
it's-
listening.
So how we communicate to each other is also how we need to be communicating with others.
What do you
not
know?
just- yes.
Yes. So like say more is a reflective listening thing. Like say more. Like let me dig deeper. And reflective listening is exactly what it is I'm just reflecting back to you what you're getting out. And so I'm allowing you to process because I'm safe, because I'll just reflect back without judgment and with safety. I'll just be a reflector to you so that you can process.
Man,
Okay.
if safety can be fostered, it goes a long, long ways in the relationship, and can definitely have some really great fruit. No?
With parenting and with our relationship.
Right.
For sure. I was having lunch with a new gal I met last week in California, and she was saying, gosh, we keep, my partner and I, they don't share our story. We keep having these fights, and I try to fix things, and he tells me, stop trying to fix me. I'm just venting. And I think this is where communication comes in well to play. And so we've learned, even with our kids, or like with Coby, sometimes I'll start telling him something and he starts fixing, or he already has what he's thinking about in his head. Oh, wait, I forgot to tell you. I just need you to listen.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
little things
All right.
like that we've learned to do, or asking my kids, do you need me to just listen, or do you need any solutions?
Yes. Yes.
And-
That's excellent.
Yeah, like just little tweaks, because if I just need to listen, it's really hard as a parent because they're telling you some crazy stuff sometimes that you're like, oh, I
Yes.
need to fix that. But
Yes.
Right.
I can
Yes.
listen too.
Oh, okay. So this leads us to the next one. So reflective listening, and this is a reflective listening skill, what is validation. So learning how to validate the other person and validate their emotions, and understand that validating them is not agreeing with them or seeing things the exact same way as them, but you can still validate them. So your kids are a good example. It might be crazy. They might be so upset about a friend did this or that or whatever, and you're able to say, instead of saying, well, you shouldn't be upset about that, you're able to just say, that makes sense. It's okay that you feel that way. If I were you and I'd experienced that, I'd feel the same way. All those things are validating to them. And what you're saying is, I see you and I care about you and you're important. And that's what we all want in our relationships.
Yep. No matter what age.
Yeah, which ultimately leads to empathy, which is, I'm being validated. My partner's reflectively listening, allowing me to process and validating me. It leads to her feeling what I'm feeling with me. And that's where connection starts to happen. And that's where intimacy starts to be built in a relationship.
So are we talking about sex here, Brannon?
Actually, if you want a lot more sex in your marriage, then learn how to communicate effectively.
There you go.
What do you know? And I shouldn't say more. If you want higher quality intimacy and better sex, then learn how to communicate. So,
but we're not like really talking about sex there. Just to be clear, intimacy is so much deeper. And I think for me, that's where I was like kind of blown away, which sounds maybe stupid to a lot of our listeners. But for me, listening to the word intimacy meant let's work on our sex life. When,
right.
I mean, you are in the end goal,
Indirectly.
but you're really just working on a lot of these other things.
So yeah, the third thing is intimacy. And it does bother me when I talk to people and they just interchange the word sex and intimacy. Like, oh yeah, we had intimacy 3 nights ago, or we have intimacy 4 times a month, and I'm thinking, if you're just, having sex with each other, if you're just using each other's body, once every other week or whatever, then you're having the opposite of intimacy when you're having sex. So sex is not intimacy. However, one of the most intimate things that we can do is have sex. And so
confusing, right?
Yeah, it's really confusing. But sexual intimacy is I believe one of the greatest forms of human connection and love, and when it's actual intimacy. But it's not the only way that we're intimate in our relationships. Intimacy, if we were to really define intimacy, what is it?
Well, we do define it in our program, Shattered Thriving. We teach different levels and layers of intimacy. So for Coby and I, just really basic logistical intimacy. Like, hey, here's what our week looks like. Here's what our day looks like. Letting each other into our lives with also expectations of, hey, I need some help here with the kids or with work, or
Yeah.
I'm going to be gone for lunch with so-and-so. That stuff. Emotional intimacy, which is a really beautiful one that I probably love the most, that I was never, ever good at. I was the one that went to therapy and they'd say, what are you feeling after Coby had his affair and actually was having his affair?
Totally.
And it was like, I don't know, I'm mad. I really didn't know what I was feeling. I was so numb and just uneducated in that. And so for me, emotional intimacy, to really dig into, this is what I'm feeling and how this is how it makes me feel in good ways and in the harder ways, is really connecting for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a really big cornerstone piece of intimacy, layer of intimacy that helped us was intellectual intimacy. In being able to consume books, Brené was like the first real big intellectual effort that we both had simultaneously, and being able to consume that information about shame resilience, about vulnerability, and have an exchange, an intellectual exchange that was vulnerable, that totally was vulnerable, but it was being able to see how shame existed in me and in my family of origin, and how some of the where some of the shame started, and Ashlynn would share similar things. That was really, really important for us, because while there wasn't psychological intimacy, meaning there wasn't trust and safety, we were still able to communicate in an intimate way about how shame, how vulnerability, or the lack thereof showed up for us.
Right. It's making me think of, I'll do intakes with couples and I'll say, go listen to our podcast. And what I want you to do is take an episode or 2 episodes a week and listen to it individually, but then come together and talk about how you feel about it.
Had we had that.
And the point, what I'm trying to do is build some intimacy. Is they're connecting on how that episode made them feel, or so I like what you bring up, reading books and then discussing those things. Intimacy is in all facets of our life, spiritually, socially, intellectually. But how I view intimacy is connection on a soul level. It's a deeper connection than just heady connection. But it's getting down to that level where you're vulnerable with each other, you're safe with each other, and you feel empowered in that relationship to be and to be you.
You're letting them in.
You're letting them in, and it feels really good. And so, intimacy is I think what we all really desire in our relationships.
Yeah, I think intimacy really revealed which is what the last talking point is. But it really did reveal for us the purpose that we never had, but desperately wanted to.
Right.
That would guide our family and our relationship moving forward, which was having purpose.
I just think, we're kind of short-sighted sometimes. We think a relationship is about, I got married because my parents were married and we're supposed to have kids, so we just got married and that's what you do. So we just do that, right?
Right.
And then we fight with each other our whole life and then we die.
Sounds so great.
Doesn't that sound awesome?
I want that. Sign me up.
As opposed to looking at it and saying, what is God creating here? Like, what is the why behind our marriage? There's purpose here. And we have our own individual purposes in our lives, but together we have this purpose. Maybe it's building your family. It's having 10 kids or whatever. It's, or maybe it's like spreading a message to the world, or whatever it is. Together as a couple, you bring your own individual talents and abilities, but you connect, you resonate together, and you amplify it all because you're doing it together.
Yeah.
Right.
I almost think, okay, listeners, raise your hand. I can't see you, but raise your hand if you were like me and we got married young, but it was exactly what you said, Brannon. Like, okay, my next step in life is I'm going to get married, and then things will work out after that. Like, everything will just fall into place.
Right.
We'll have the kids, we'll finish school, we'll have the jobs, all the things. And we focused more on let's get married, let's have a wedding, than we actually focused on what does it look like after that.
Completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
And so, we've kind of had a rough, how does it look like after that? But really, we're trying to help you guys here today is to see, here's what to do after the wedding day. And here's what it can be. It can be so much more than maybe what it is right now. I know all of us here are looking at, okay, we've created a little challenge for relationships, and we're thinking, we're going to take it ourselves, even though we created it.
Absolutely.
It's good for all of us to have that reflection and say, hey, where are we at with things? Where in these 4 areas are we where we want to be, or can we amp it up a little?
Right. Absolutely.
Awesome.
I joke with Jenny. I'm like, man, when I married you, I didn't even know you. I didn't know her. It was really fast and really stupid to get married that fast. But Jenny and I were doing a retreat in Peru next month together, and it's amazing because we're creating this thing together, and we're helping the world and helping people, and I can definitely say I see purpose together with her, on top of raising our 4 kids, and so ultimately creating that purpose together is what it's all about. So that's why what we've created, this challenge, is so awesome. It's really simple in some ways, yet so profound in so many other ways.
Because we haven't really told you guys what we have done, but we have created a challenge.
No, but what we've done is we've talked about compassion, communication, intimacy, and purpose, and we've just touched on each of those. But what we realized was every relationship, no matter if you share our story, the story that Ashlynn and I have or not, every relationship needs to have these fundamental pieces in order to make relationships work. Yeah. And so we've created this challenge that encompasses each of these, and there's a week-long focus with activities specifically for each day about compassion for a
That are
week.
simple activities.
Very, very simple, very basic. But the best movement that we can have when we need more connection, when we need our relationship to work better, is little, small, measurable things. And that's what we have built with these 4 topics.
Yeah, little baby steps back into maybe where you were or where you want to be, that are actionable items.
Yep.
So
And this is really something that a challenge that anybody, no matter if you're married, no matter if you're engaged, if you're just in a partnership, or if you're dating seriously, or if you've just been married, or if you've been married 30 years, these topics are things that can literally improve your relationship.
I think it's amazing too, like some of the stuff in the challenge that we have. I say it's simple, but if you just stop and get mindful and follow through on some of these simple things,
Yeah.
the drastic shifts that you'll have in your relationship and in your life will shift things completely. So it's really awesome. I'm really excited about what we've created together, and I'm actually really excited to do it with
Yeah.
Jenny. So
Yeah, it should
yeah,
be
we'll
good.
be doing it there too. So how can they find this challenge? Is it a 30-day challenge? What is it? 30 days. I know because I helped create it, but I also forgot.
But they need to go to beyond-enough.com/relationship.
And we'll put that link down in the
that's-
show notes
yes,
as well.
And that's where you can find all the information about this challenge. Again, we want to make sure that it's sustainable each day, so it's not much each day, but over the course of 30 days, you're going to see how your relationship can evolve and change and improve.
And I do want to say
With
it
this.
is priced at a price point where pretty much anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So it's really affordable. So
No matter where you're at.
Guys, thanks for being here. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you watching if you're on YouTube. And just know that you sharing this episode can help somebody, again, no matter what story that they have. If they're in a relationship, it can improve. So glad you're here.
see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Let them know it's going to be out next Tuesday.
It will be out on St. Patrick's Day, which is March 17th, 2020. So if you're watching this a week early, good for you, but go to that website in a week.
Thanks, guys.